What's up, guys? I'm back with another video for the first time in like 4 months. Before I get into anything, I want to say December 9th, Raleigh, Big Boy Gaming is hosting a $5,000 cash prize Edison tournament. The first place prize is a giant Black Rose Dragon. The rest of the prizing is monetary. There's probably some other stuff he's doing too. It takes 144 people to break even. Anything past that will be going into the prize pool as further prizes, as far as I'm aware. All the information for that is on the Big Boy Gaming Facebook page. Go check them out. They're a great store. The owner, Diego, is a great guy, loves the community, does so much for us, and absolutely deserves all the support that he can get. And he just wants to make Edison grow for, everyone, and he realizes how big of a hub North Carolina has become for Edison and wants to keep pushing that. So, December 9th in Raleigh, huge Edison tournament. Any further details, just look on the Facebook page and you'll see them. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm back fishing. I was trying to do some more engaging content, but it's really hard to keep my train of thought when I have to focus on not dying. So, if I'm going to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, I guess I'll just do this stuff on the side. And what I want to talk about today is something that I was going to make a video on a long time ago and never got around to, because I didn't think the idea was fully fleshed out enough. But I don't think anything I do on this channel is really that fully fleshed out, so why not just give it a go before turning it into like an article or something. And just kind of stream of consciousness talk about this idea. So there's been a resurgence lately in conversations I've seen that revolve around aggro, combo, control, mid-range, ramp, stun, a whole bunch of Magic the Gathering terms in relation to deck types and strategies. And for a particular shorthand, these are fine. They don't really get into the core mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because they are rooted in a mana system. Aggro decks play big guys for little cost, typically vanillas back in the day, but nowadays they just print whatever. Just like modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So, control decks would often play negation spells. Generally blue cards in general are just the control bread and butter. Mid-range would play bigger guys that they would drop later in the game. Ramp would play decks or cards that are centered around the mana curve of having 1 mana turn 1, 2 mana turn 2, etc., etc. Stun, which is called Prison in Magic, would focus around artifacts that make the opponent not able to really do anything. But they still cost mana to play. Unlike the floodgates in Yu-Gi-Oh, which typically do not have any cost to activate. So, all of that's fine. But when you realize that it's all rooted in a mana system, there's really no point in describing it to Yu-Gi-Oh, because when you look at a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, especially a modern one, and a lot of this channel is me talking about Edison because it's probably the more popular retro format at the moment. It's the one I play the most, and yada yada. But this applies to all of Yu-Gi-Oh in general, and it's especially more true as time goes on, which I think is very interesting because you can apply these concepts that come from Magic to early Yu-Gi-Oh much more than you can now, and I think the reason for that should be obvious, because early Yu-Gi-Oh had more of a meaningful mana system, which was the normal summon. You had 1 normal summon per turn, very few cards ever broke it. In the very first set, there was Monster Reborn, and I don't believe anything else special summoned a monster. In fact, special summons were so special when when Monster Reborn came out, when the game was released, that The card even said this is, like, it had a whole line of text explaining that it's a special summon, that it's not normal. And of course now special summons mean nothing. The mana system that was the one normal summon per turn is now all but gone. And whatever we ascribe to this game that comes from Magic, just very meaningless. So, about probably, God, this is probably about 6 months ago. Let me look at my notes. I have some dates on this stuff. Oh, really, about 10 months ago. This was February that I told someone this. So about 10 months ago, or 8 months ago, my bad. I came up with this little idea for classifying decks, which was rooted in one of two things. Or really, it's rooted in one thing and how you use it in one of two ways. And it's called free time. So what is free time? Free time is a state of the game, not a game state, but a state of the game. If you look at it from a cosmic perspective, just you take like a particular game, not even the whole game of Yu-Gi-Oh, but just take a particular game and look down at it, and determine when there is absolutely nothing that one player can do, and that is free time. Only one player. If there's nothing that either player can do, then something's weird. But when one player can do effectively, not necessarily absolutely, but effectively nothing, the other player is in a state of free time. And so there are two things that you can do. You can abuse free time. You can use free time to do all of your plays, or you can create free time. And there are types of free time. There's explicit free time. This is free time that occurs when there is nothing, when there are actually no cards the opponent can use. So we're talking like the first turn in GOAT format. If you want to play like DMOC FTK, you have absolute explicit free time. Because unless the opponent's playing Gravekeeper's Watcher for your card destruction, or Library FTK, that's one that might actually come up with. But no one plays Gravekeeper's Watcher, so we can effectively say, as far as the meta is concerned, all of GOAT format's turn 1 is explicit free time. And outside of Game 2, where people might side in Crow, or if you're playing against Fairies, turn 1 in Edison, explicit free time. You can summon Stratos, you can add the Malicious, you can set the Phoenix Wing. You can do your Substitute combo. You can do Whirlwind Shura. You can do anything you want turn 1, and there's pretty much nothing the opponent can do to interact with it. And then there is implicit free time, which is free time that is created by cards. So, implicit free time would be what more stun-oriented decks are trying to do. For example, if an Eldritch player flips Skill Drain on you, and all of your monsters are now useless, and they can't interact with what the Eldritch player is doing, he is in a state of free time to summon back his Lord and attack you for 3,500 and flip whatever trap card to pop anything that you want to do. He has his free reign on the game state. So, implicit free time is, as you can imagine, the one that's created, while explicit free time is typically the one that's abused. So, in Yu-Gi-Oh, I think every deck is a combo deck to some extent. And it's not really worth sitting there and going, oh, well, Dragon Link's a combo deck, but Eldritch is a stun deck. And while that may be true, Eldritch is still doing things that you would ascribe to being a combination. It's still doing things that result in two or more cards interacting with one another in such a way as to create the game plan the deck is going for. So the way I see it is, if every deck's a combo deck, which, if you disagree with it at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't really know what to say. Every deck just does something combo-like. Maybe there are decks that don't, like, I don't know. Guru's kind of brain dead. But Guru's still like Eldritch or Labyrinth in the sense that, like, there's, like, I mean, literally, I mean, Hidden City is, Hidden City Guru is a combo. Fiendus, Hidden City, I mean, or Fiendus Guru, like all, those are all combos. Even though the deck is completely and totally stun-oriented, those are still combos that result in the desired outcome for the deck. They are integral to the game plan. So even the dumbest deck with the simplest lines of play have combos and act as though in particular game states they are the one that is the combo deck. So what this means is, in order for us to say what is a true combo deck, what is a deck that if we look at it we go, yeah, that's combo, that's Dragon Link, that's Goki, that's I don't know, Performapal, that's Mermail, that's, you're going back in time, like, I don't know, it's Library FTK, you know, it's like Dragon Ruler's kind of, I guess, it's Wind Up, that's, those decks are going to be the decks that are abusing free time, explicit free time, typically, but they can also abuse implicit free time. So there are two types of explicit and two types of implicit free time as well. You can break this down pretty far. And that would be natural and artificial. So natural explicit free time is like the turn one where there's nothing going on. You can do anything you want. In a post-hand trap world, this doesn't exist. I think there is, unless the opponent has absolutely no cards, I think there's genuinely no natural explicit free time in Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. But like, game one against anything that's not fairies and Edison would be natural explicit free time, whereas when you have gone through a combo and checked for your opponent's possible responses and they haven't dropped Ash, they haven't dropped Droll, they haven't dropped Veiler, that would be natural implicit free time. And so that means that you are in free time because you are capable of making plays uninterrupted. You're just not, you're not being told directly by the game that you're in free time. You know it because you know how to play. And you can recognize when you are in those positions. And then there's artificial. Artificial explicit free time would be the previous like Eldritch example, when you have like rivalry skill drain flip and all you have to do is like loop your Eldritch because they can't play any cards. Like, I've seen, like, I've literally had skill drain rivalry zombie world on the field before, and it's disgusting. My opponent can't play the game. I have literal, actual, complete, explicit free time, but I created it. I'm playing the stun deck, the deck that wants to create the free time by bringing the opponent's ceiling down. And then there's artificial implicit free time, which is the same thing, except it's the same thing as natural implicit free time, except that you made it yourself. Like you don't know. There's nothing telling you the opponent can't do anything, but you're pretty sure. Like you've checked all their back rows. Like, for example, say you're playing Edison, and you keep swinging with two monsters, and they're doing damage. They're connecting. Your opponent doesn't have Mirror Force down. They would have used it. They don't have Dimensional Prison down. They probably would have used it. If they have no back row and all of your attacks are going through, they don't have Gores. Unless they are super big brain holding it, but like, and that's what I mean, like, you can't know for sure. It's implicit. Although I think that's natural implicit free time. But the point is, it's implied. You can gather it from your knowledge of the game and the reads you've made that you are capable of doing whatever you want, even though the opponent could have responses. You just kind of know they don't. And so every deck in some way aims to use either use free time or create it. And it doesn't matter, like artificial and natural, that's not a relevant distinction when determining like which one a deck is, because both decks like to use and create the same way, like both styles. So basically, the whole premise is that when you have a combo deck, your entire goal is to kill the opponent. When you're playing Dragon Link, you want to set up like spheres and do they play Barone now? I don't know. I remember the old boards was like Savage, Fears, Calamity. Like, it was a very tough board to break. And kind of what a combo deck does is take the natural free time that they have on their first turn and turn it into artificial free time. Because if you don't turn your natural free time into artificial free time, the opponent gets natural free time. So, for example, if all you do is summon Stratos, add Malicious, you've used your explicit free time. But if you didn't set a back row, if the opponent has nothing to think about, nothing to worry about, now they have explicit free time. And if they're playing a combo deck, they're going to use it. Like that's what they want. You know, they want to be in that position, the bigger deck. They want to be the deck that's playing to abuse the free time rather than create it, because you've already let them have it. They don't have to create it anymore. Whereas if you're, summoning Stratos, adding Malicious, you're probably playing Diva Hero at that point, and you are most certainly the deck you're one of the decks in Edison that wants free time the most. And same for if you were playing current format and you were playing Tearlament. I would say Tearlament enjoys free time. Tearlament puts up a lot of interruptions, and so the mirror doesn't have a lot of free time because even from the hand, both decks are capable of interrupting one another whenever they feel like it. It seems, but for example, or Kashtira. Kashtira definitely loves its turn 1 free time, but kind of every deck does. And Kashtira just happens to be really good at creating artificial free time. If it's not apparent, I didn't really write a script for this, because I didn't really plan on making a video about it until I did, but whatever. Just bear with me a little. I do have to gather some thoughts, but basically, when it comes down to these sorts of situations, when you're building a deck, the deck that you decide to play and then how you build the deck all factor, or all consider and factor in what you want to do with this concept of free time, and whether you know it or not, that's how you've been building decks. Because you wouldn't know. I mean, it's a concept that I came up with in just a shower thought one day, that I got tired of seeing people talk about combo and control decks, and I was like, you know what, okay, I'm going to figure something out that better suits Yu-Gi-Oh! And maybe other non-mana based games. I think most games have a mana system, to some extent. And you can still apply the Magic the Gathering stuff to those, but there is, a hint of this can be useful in Magic the Gathering as well. There's just not as much free time in Magic because of the mana system. Like, you can, maybe if you're playing Legacy and you drop a Black Lotus turn 1, but, that might be free time since the opponent doesn't have any mana. But, the way you build decks considering this stuff is what really matters. Like, it just doesn't mean a lot for me to make a video and say, well, here's this fresh new idea, and I came up with it, have fun with it. Like, it just doesn't mean anything to do that. Rather, when you make decks for any format, what you're going to be considering is first your win condition. You're always going to be thinking about like what game state do I want to arrive at when my opponent is dead. Like so when you're playing, for example, Diva Hero, Stardust, Absolute Zero, and Gilman, for example. Like I mean, like the Gilman's there a lot, but or Stardust, Absolute Zero, and another level 8 synchro. Very common boards for Diva Hero. And the reason that those decks work, especially a build like Kairo's, who he cut the Phoenix Wings, and he decided to play deck dev Mind Crush. And I think that deck is kind of, it's not my preferred build of Diva Hero, but and, you know, me and a true hero can, me and him can argue. We've argued before, and that's not my preferred way of playing Diva Hero. But I will give it a lot of credit because whether he realized it or not, because I've never talked to him about this, I don't know what goes on in his head when he was making the deck, but he made the perfect deck to abuse the free time that he gets during the game. With deck dev in the main, being able to drop all of the opponent's cards and know everything that he has, and then Mind Crush. You know, so you flip Dust Shoot or deck dev, you see what they have, you flip Mind Crush. You are literally completely and totally giving yourself all the free time that you have all the implicit free time because you know exactly what to play around and you know exactly what they can use and what they can't. And so when you're building a deck, he's described it as just being an OTK deck. Like he builds it to be an OTK deck because he wants to put all this pressure on. He wants to use this concept of free time, whether he knows it or not. And he's done that incredibly well because the deck is, I mean, clearly he got second in Nats with it. And it's just like a proof of concept deck. Even considering that like it was built on more foundational Yu-Gi-Oh theory, where like you don't think about this sort of almost meaningless, it seems, concept of when I get to play, when my opponent gets to play. It fits perfectly into it. It's not a theory that's like that's using its like it's not like a masturbatory theory or anything like that. Like the point is not to come up with a theory that sounds good and then justify it by making things later. It really, I mean, you can take real decks that have topped and apply this theory like to them and show exactly why they top and why they function the way that they do. And so combo decks in Edison and current format, typically when they use their removal, it is to create more free time. It is to undo the free time of the opponent. So for example, when I flip Raikou in Value Turbo, I'm typically targeting back rows. Unless there is a Fossil Dyna or a Thunder, or a Thunder King, doesn't matter, but like, if there's a particular monster that's just like giving me trouble, then I'll pop that. But typically, I want to pop the bottomlesses, the deep prisons, things that will, in the long term, harm my win condition. And that is kind of where this comes into play, because if I were to play Gravekeepers and play down the Necro Valley, I am creating the free time by taking it away from you. I'm making it so that you can't play and I can. It's complete artificial free time, and it's explicit. Like Necro Valley says, you can't use Value's Effect. Necro Valley says that you you can bring back Plague, but I mean, I think you can't use Value's Effect on its own. It's fine. Or if I'm playing against Frogs and I summon Dyna, I am explicitly saying, like, you don't have an option to play the game right now. And so when I'm building a deck like Blackwing, and I want to make a side deck, I first analyze which deck is better at using the free time, and it's obviously Frogs. So what do I have to do to my side deck? I have to counter that free time. I have to play the stun. I have to play the aggro, as they would say, the beatdown. And playing the beatdown puts you in control. You see why this doesn't make a lot of sense for Yu-Gi-Oh? Rather, what I want to do is, I want to take the deck that uses its free time better and remove that option from them. I want to create my free time by removing it from the opponent. So, when I play Labyrinth, I still play the skill drain build of Labyrinth. I think that, I think it was Ryan Yu who like cut all the trap cards that weren't actually Labyrinth traps or whatever, and just, or at least all the floodgates. And I'm not convinced. I'm sure that build's fine, but he's also a very good player. He's a better player than people who he plays against, which matters a lot more in current format, I think. Current is never as developed as Edison is, and so the better players always have a constant edge. And that's something that I think is a fault of Edison. Edison is very developed to the point now where bad players win more often than they should. But yeah, so again, I apologize for basically just rambling, because I do want to talk about deck building again in this frame of reference, in this like mind state of how you approach winning the game. But I think it is easiest to do this in current format mode, because there are so many decks, yet all of them seem to fall either directly into combo or stun. There just doesn't seem to be any quote-unquote mid-range or just basic control, and people will call stun decks control decks because they don't know the meaning of the word. But as long as they're doing that, as long as they're calling stun decks control decks, even though that's not what they are, that is what they are. Like, I mean, that's what the term means for Yu-Gi-Oh! And the fact that it means something different for Yu-Gi-Oh! Than it means for Magic is, frankly, a little annoying. And it shows why it doesn't really work. Because all the features of control decks that are actually like a part of what makes them what they are, which is basically a slow grind to an overwhelming win condition. Something like Goat Control. It's just a slow burn until you hit that Storm Tribe DLS. Or Fairies. It's a slow burn until you hit the Brio Christia, and then you can't lose. You know, it's like you have this big push. Basically, I mean, you can sit on 8,000 and then they lose it all at once. In control decks is, you know, you can do this for 10 or 12 turns, whereas an OTK deck would only want to do it for the first turn of the game, and then after that, you're supposed to be dead. Which is sort of a difference here, right? Diva Hero is a deck like that, and I would say it seeks to abuse free time rather than create it. Whereas Fairies seek to kind of grind out this neutral state. They have free time simply by the premise of their effects not caring. And then all at once, they realize the free time. Like, they realize when they can push for the game. And that's kind of a difference between combo and control, but in Yu-Gi-Oh! At least. And that doesn't really matter for this theory, which is great, because all you have to do is look at a deck like Diva Hero and say, you want to abuse your free time, and all your removal is to re-raise your ceiling to do so. And then you look at a deck like Fairies, and they are a very fundamental stereotypical control deck. But they mostly seek to create free time. by slowly grinding out the game and taking options away from the opponent. And both of them feature heavily the control concepts. Likewise, you look at a deck like Black Wings, which plays a ton of trap cards, and they want to artificially create free time. And so Black Wings and Fairies are playing in a very similar mind state for how they want to approach winning the game, except that Black Wings don't have that one big push. Black Wings don't play in the very typical control deck fashion that you would get out of Magic the Gathering, but they play the trap cards, and they play some of them. I mean, they'll play Oppression, which is a very classic, explicit free time creator. It's I can play, you can't. So that's what Oppression says most of the time when you flip it. And so when you realize that like these decks that you would call aggro and control and combo, and I guess you can call Gravekeeper stun, or you can call Eldritch stun and Guru stun and Labyrinth. I don't think anyone would call Labyrinth stun unless they're stupid. But I mean, people think trap cards mean stun, so sure. And then compared to Dragon Link Tier Limit, even Kashtira, which Kashtira is by definition, if you were to put the Yu-Gi-Oh term or the Magic terms into Yu-Gi-Oh, Kashtira is very mid-range. It's very clear which decks are abusing their natural free time to create artificial free time, and which decks are creating free time from the get-go in order to abuse it. Basically, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you can kind of boil it down to like, does the deck summon its floodgate or set its floodgate? And if it summons its floodgate, it needs free time to do that to begin with. And it's the combo deck, it's the control deck, it's going for something bigger than what it starts with. Whereas the stun deck just doesn't. Yeah, so when it comes to building a deck in this way, what you have to consider is first and foremost, how are you going to accomplish your win condition? Like, what is the most basic situation and scenario that you can see yourself winning the game by doing? And so, for Diva Hero, that's resolving a lot of Miracle Fusions. For Fairies, that is summoning Christia. Like, literally, just one Christia can do it. And that's also many tangents here, but Christia doesn't even have to actually OTK. You don't have to go Brio Christia and OTK them. You don't have to do that. It's not necessary, because Christia has an effect that literally says the opponent can't play. Like Christia, it's a very good example of a control deck, because you are summoning your floodgate. Whereas Blackwing is setting their floodgate, their oppression, their skill drains if they side that. And I would say Fossil Dyna counts as setting a floodgate, like, because it's just a normal summon. It's the same as setting a trap card. You get the action without any run around. Like Christia has a requirement. Arise Heart, Rest in Peace has a requirement. Dyna does not have a requirement. So if he floodgates, if the Ryo of a Dyna, those count as just setting. That's the same as setting the oppression or a skill drain. Like that's so I guess I should say special summons their floodgate, or I guess Vanity's Fiend, tributes. I don't know. The point is, like, you'll know it when you see it. I should say, like, it's very obvious that Fossil Dyna is a bit different from Christia. Even though they carry the same effect, but Christia has a bit more of a deadly impact on the game state, because you can't attack over Christia. I mean, you can be playing your own deck that has Honest, or you can go Shura Kalut. I mean, it's coming back next turn, and both Kalut and Honest lose to the Herald, which it probably added back, or it might have added back Honest, which also makes both of them completely irrelevant. There's just not really much you can do to a Christia. which makes it so much stronger than Dinah, and makes it so much more into this into the control aspect here. So Christie is a card for decks that aim to use free time to create free time, while Dinah is more of a card for decks that aim to create free time to use free time. And that's, I guess, a little bit of a confusing statement, but like it ultimately comes down to which order you're doing things in, because every deck is going to be doing, but you don't want to create free time and then not use it. Obviously, when I say that a deck wants to create free time, it wants to do something with it. It wants to attack you for game while you can't do anything about it. You know, like it wants to create scenarios where you are incapable of responding to their plays. Whereas the control deck, the combo deck, wants to create scenarios where they respond to all your plays. So they use their free time to create free time, or rather negate your free time, which is the same as creating it for them. It's like it's a zero-sum situation here. Like if you have free time, they don't. You know, vice versa. So by using free time to create free time, you are taking it away from them. And then if you are the stun deck, you want to create free time, take it away from them so that you can use it for yourself. So a card like Christia and Dinah, the same effect. They are in incredible juxtaposition whenever to properly represent this concept. And so when you're building a deck and you're wondering what cards to put in, or wondering what to play for a tournament, or like what cards work best together, everything that you go through when building a deck, you have to consider, what is your deck trying to do? Is it trying to use your God-given free time to do something to make the opponent's life worse? Or is it trying to make the opponent's life worse so that you can do something? Basically, the question is, if you want to play fairies, do you play cards that are you can play oppression, but I don't know that you need to, especially considering you have Christia. But like, do you want to play floodgates in fairies that aren't named Christia? No, you want to play a game that grinds down to facilitating Christia winning. Whereas if you want to build Black Wings, you want to play the trap cards, you want to play the floodgates, you want to pull your opponent down to where your monsters, even though they might not be flashy. You know, Shura's not a flashy monster. Shura's a normal summon. Bora, he just pierces. Gale is a little flashy, I guess. But you want to add cards that pull the opponent down so that you can overwhelm them that way. Rather than you overwhelming them to pull them down, you pull them down to overwhelm them. So the entire thing is like this zero-sum game of determining like the order of operations of your win condition. And so when you really get into it, no deck is aggro. Every deck's aggro. Every deck is aggressively trying to screw the opponent out of winning. And no deck is control. Every deck is trying to control the opponent some way or another. They either want to do it first or they want to do it second. No deck is a combo because every deck has combos. No deck is stun because every deck is trying to lock their opponent out of winning, because the best way to win is to make the opponent unable to play. It's not to win. The goal is not to win. The goal is to make the opponent unable to play, and then winning follows. So the best way for some decks to make the opponent unable to play, for example, a deck like Diva Hero, is to put their life points to 0. The best way to make them unable to play is to win, which is kind of very reductive and stupid, and I'm not cutting that out. But for a deck like Fairies, the best way to win is to make them unable to play, and then your attacks for game will just push through. like once you drop the Christia, they can't special summon. They're drawing dead cards against you, especially if you can follow it up with a storm. There's just not a lot to do at that point, and so that's why I've elected to build a lot of my decks for Edison format. And the reason why I have what I would at least consider to be such streamlined lists for so many of my decks is because I just want to know when I load up a deck that it's going to consistently do one of two things, and that is either take away my opponent's ability to play or augment my own ability to play, because that will naturally take away theirs. And those are the only two things you can really do. And historically, decks that have done the latter, that have augmented their own play, that have like decided to touch themselves in order to play rather than like worry about what the opponent's doing, those are typically more consistent because they are, I mean, they're self-referential. They don't care what the opponents own. Whereas decks that are reactive do, which is why they're not very good. And that is why, even though I think Fairy's not an exceptional deck on paper or even in practice, I do think it is one of the better decks you can be playing because it is very much capable of taking this theory and pushing it to its extreme. Same for Diva Hero, same for Blackwing. Blackwing in most matchups is using the free time, I think. And it's only against decks like Frog that they're not. It kind of comes down to who's the beatdown, like determining who is the control of a matchup and who is the aggressor of a matchup. But yeah, you can't ever make like a non-fluid Yu-Gi-Oh theory because of how decks function and how they operate. Like it's not. I won't even say it's not easy. It's just impossible to make a non-fluid, to make a completely rigid theory that applies all the time. Because even though I can say, oh yeah, Blackwing wants to play the floodgates, so they want to reduce the opponent's free time, they want to create free time for themselves, and then use it. There are plenty of matchups where they absolutely want to just use what they have. I mean, I've never seen a Blackwing player complain about going first opening Whirlwind Shura. It's unstoppable. There's nothing in it. There's no Ghost Ogre. There's nothing in Edison that can stop Whirlwind Shura at turn 1. Okay, there's Herald of Green Light, but whatever. And you know, so I mean, no matter what, you're going to want to use the free time you have. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a deck getting the ability to use its free time and like completely uninterrupted. Even if it wants to be the deck that's creating free time, there's nothing wrong with using. You don't just like you don't go first Whirlwind Shura but just set the traps because you feel like you're trying to drag your opponent down. No, you can get your advantage and then also drag your opponent down afterwards, and that's why Whirl Shura with trap cards is such a busted opening compared to like setting Angel bottomless or whatever. It's like Blackwing is very good because it can and does intend on doing both. Even though you build it to do, you build it mainly to do one, which is you either pick, are you going to play a more aggressive build like the Greffer build, like the Swedish Blackwing list they call it, that has like Greffer, Nolan Extermination. The deck that when you put removal in, the removal is to raise your own ceiling and to abuse the free time that you're given. Or if you want to play the more reactive build with like main oppressions and the 1 value lists and the 13, 14 traps. Two different ways to play Blackwing and for two different results in gameplay. The idea, despite me coming up with it a long time ago, is not as fleshed out as I would like it, because I haven't thought about it as much and I haven't really written anything down. Like I have no script for this video. I don't ever really write a script, but this is one of those that probably could have used one, or maybe use some infographics, something more than me playing RuneScape behind it. I wish that I could have focused on doing Duke or something so that you could see me being a sick gamer instead of just fishing for the 40th time. But, yeah. I don't know that I really have too much left to say, but I mean, I could probably go on for a while, bring up different examples. Maybe it'd be better if I had someone with me and we could talk about the decks a little further and, like, how we would, like, fully, totally define, like, what's going on with them. But this is probably something you can just, like, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out for you to think about it, and for you to consider, like, there's no longer any need for you to think, like, in the aggro control combo mindset for Magic the Gathering, because it just doesn't work for Yu-Gi-Oh! Every deck's the aggro, every deck's the control, every deck's the combo. Just don't worry about that, and worry more about when you draw a hand, like, what am I capable of doing? You don't always have to do it all, for the record. Don't blow everything turn one, especially in Edison, where brain control and whatnot are legal. But just being in the mindset of, like, when you draw a hand and going, what can my opponent have? Oh, they can have nothing. They literally have no possible answers. What can you do? And also when you make the deck, going like, does this card benefit a scenario in which I am, like, going about my game plan? So, for example, when a True Hero cut Phoenix Wing from Diva Hero, I think that's insane, because I don't know what he really is doing with the Greffer if he doesn't, or what he's doing with Malicious if he doesn't draw the Greffer. Is he like calling wrong with Mind Crush or I'm just not sure how it's getting him a grave if he searches it. I guess he can just go for Prodigy usually instead, and then, like, hope to mill the Malicious. I don't know, like, hope to draw Future Fusion, but I haven't talked to him about that list very much. All I know is he got second in hats with it, so I can't say too much bad about it. The main takeaway, I think, from this video, if you get a takeaway at all, because I've done a lot of rambling, I'll admit, so. But yeah, I think the main takeaway is that, like, when you build a deck, you consider, you should consider your own game plan more than the meta to begin with. And after you have, like, fully and totally, and this is especially true in Edison because there's so many decks in the meta, I think that, like, this is kind of a tangent, but I think, like, meta calls are insane. Unless you have, like, a 10-person locals, you know, everyone there plays one deck, or, like, I don't know, like 8 of them play one deck or something. Like, making meta calls in these tournaments is insane. Like when I pulled up to the Rivet, I just said I'm going to play a deck. Like, I'll make my side deck for, you know, I'm guaranteed to face, like, a Blackwing and a Value and, like, a Frog Mirror, or, you know, I'll make my side deck for things I know that I'll probably face. But main deck techs for, like, for specific meta calls, it really cannot be done at this stage in Edison, because even though Edison is probably really only a 4 to 5 deck format if it were, like, fully optimized, and I don't believe it's as diverse as it is. People believe it is. People believe it's this diverse, and as a result, it actually legitimately is. And you have to concede that the popular opinion here is that there are 50,000 decks in Edison, so you're probably going to see 8 different decks in an 8-round tournament, or at least 6 different decks. Like, I genuinely don't think that I could go a whole 8-round tournament playing against nothing but Blackwing and Value. I don't think it's possible. And so in a format like Edison, you have to, you just have to focus on, like, what you're doing more than anything else, I think, because making your own deck consistent and just siding for the matchups you know won't be very good instead of trying to make some crazy meta calls is significantly better and, like, more profitable in the long run, which is why, like, I had a bad tournament yesterday or Saturday I went like 1-3. It is what it is. You have a bad tournament every once in a while, but I've also got plenty of tops because I just played a deck that I knew was good. I didn't try to do anything super fancy. I think the fanciest thing I've done was like my Blackwing list from, I don't know, like Ribbit 3 of last year, where I mained like 7 tools in my body. Like, that's probably the fanciest I've done, and I don't think that's fancy at all. I have no intention of doing silly stuff for meta calls because there's just no meta to make a call for. And yeah, so that's my tangent over. The whole point of that tangent is just to be like, you make a deck, you need to make the deck, like make the deck play the way it's supposed to. Identify whether you are trying to use the free time or create a free time. And when I say use, it can also mean deny. So like you use a free time to create more of it for yourself. Like you use yours to deny the opponent theirs, or you create your own to then use. Those are your two options typically. And you just have to identify which one your deck wants to do most. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking because I'm saying dumb stuff now. Maybe I have been for like the past hour. Who knows? But yeah, that's my video for the day, and probably the next 6 months. I just want to say also, I met a lot of great people in Orlando this weekend. The tournament didn't go well for me, but like everything else was awesome. I met 2 guys who had their own YouTube channel, and they're called Button Busters. Their names are Will and Rick. They're really cool guys. They also play RuneScape, and you should go subscribe to them. They're cool. They're really good people. Also, I met my longtime friend AJT. I met Legends, Chris, and Alvarado. It was a great weekend. Even though, like I said, even though the tournament doesn't go well, like the point of going to in-person tournaments is to have fun with people, not to like sweat out like stupid wins. I can do that online sometimes. Although I would have liked to have won, obviously, it's an SJC Dark End, but yeah, I think it's more important that I met everyone cool, and it wasn't just them. I met the Poker Rapper. I met a bunch of his friends. I met like Feng Shui. I met Feng Shui and Ads, but I met plenty of people. I met Jake Mattern. Great Glide player. I watched Murray beat him, which is sad, but Murray's my friend, so. Yeah, I'll see y'all later, I guess. Hope this video was enlightening in some capacity, and that you learned something from it, and you can, like, use the knowledge within it to, like, make better decks or something. I don't know. Peace.